Welcome all those that are here Zooming in person and those watching the recording afterwards. Some brief announcements from the Chamber and Safety Council before we get started here. One, as you probably saw, and I believe some emails that went out last week, that Tanya Boffman has taken a position away from the Chamber to work on some other skills that she has, and we're very excited and happy for her. And we're very excited to have our part-time person, Kelly Little, now in our project manager position here. So some of you may already know Kelly, and she's now going to be eventually, once we're back in person, hopefully knock on wood in July, be the facilitator of the in-person Safety Council meetings. But Kelly Little is our new project manager. So we're very happy to have her in place there. We will not have, a reminder, we'll not have a meeting in March. Instead, we'll be encouraging all y'all to actually, Laura, there is a safety congress, right? In March.
Yeah, I'll be talking about it. Yep.
Okay. All right. And then also a reminder, I believe it may have gone out, or if it hasn't yet, it's going out very soon. It's a quick turnaround, but the Lacey Award, the 2021 Lacey Award, is going to be back on its regular schedule and the winner being announced in May. So the announcement for that went out again this week or early last week. The deadline to apply for the Lacey Award is March 4th. And again, a very prestigious award, been around for a very, very long time. And if I guess if you have any interest in dedication in safety and having this inspection team in to review some of your processes and celebrate all the work that you've been doing towards safety, then I strongly encourage you to go through the Lacey Award process. Laura's on that committee. They do a great job. And yeah, you should see an email on that soon. And before we get into, so we're very happy today to have Dan Steffen. Getting a nod.
Yep, Steffen.
He is an Osha Toledo office consultant, and he'll be giving us an update on kind of where Osha is at currently. A lot of things happening over there, and what we're going to see, I guess, for the rest of 2022. Before we get into Dan's presentation, we'll have Laura Smith, our BWC representative, give us some BWC announcements.
Hi, everybody. If you're new to the Marion Area Safety Council, my name is Laura Smith. I am the BWC rep and safety and safety consultant for Marion County. So if you have any questions regarding safety, you can always reach out to me or the chamber, and Matt is really good at forwarding your messages on to me. Just as a reminder, we are able to come out, we as being the consultants, we are able to come out to your facilities. So if you have any questions on ergonomic hazards, industrial hygiene concerns, or just general safety, please reach out because we would love to come out and visit you. And obviously we'd follow any COVID protocols that you do have in place. As Matt mentioned, we are having our Ohio Safety Congress and Expo. Everything is virtual again this year. It is March 9th and 10th. We have a lot of exhibitors, thousands of participants every year. We have a lot of different sessions this year, a lot of different tracks. So it's going to be really good. This is an opportunity too, if you are in the industry specific safety program, you can participate in those 3 1-hour sessions and then gain a credit towards that rebate program as well. So we still have rebate programs going on, even though Safety Council rebate isn't active right now. If you're in the other rebate programs, those rebate programs are still active. So you want to make sure that you're doing what's required to obtain that rebate. And if you have questions, again, reach out to me and I can do research into that for you. But again, we have live and on-demand sessions. We have that interactive Expo online forum and a 3D lobby going on this year. So if you haven't already, it's just ohiosafetycongress.com. Make sure you have your BWC policy number and register. If you registered previously, you would just use your login information from previous years to then go in and register for whichever sessions you want to join. There's just an example of our webpage. And again, free registration, March 9th and 10th. Just a couple updates. We do have some webinars coming up. We have Record Keeping 201, Pitfalls in OSHA Record Keeping. That's going to be February 17th. OSHA On-Site Consultation, Ohio's Best Kept Secret. I would I'm going to say I'm the best kept secret in Ohio because I'm just BWC. They're great too. Definitely watch that. But OSHA on-site consultation, that's a February 22nd. They'll be able to help you just like I can. So just definitely watch that. And then Ohio e-courses, bloodborne pathogens. We've got a lot of different e-courses available, developing safety culture, OSHA record keeping 101, excuse me. And then virtual classes we have going on, JSA is February 10th. I'm actually instructing the emergency preparedness planning half-day workshop on February 16th. So we still have a lot of different classes available for you guys. So just check those out. We also have a small and minority business webinar going on. I'm going to send this information sheet out to Matt as well after the meeting today, along with this presentation so you guys can see it. But we've got various webinars that you can join if you're in that smaller minority business to get you a lot of information about who the BWC is, how we can help you, and things like that. Also, just a reminder, Dan might be happy that I'm going to mention this. Make sure your 300 summaries are posted, your 300 A's. Make sure that they should have been posted about 8 days ago. So February 1st to April 30th, make sure that they're posted fully complete, signed by the highest ranking official at your facility. Get those posted somewhere that every employee can see. And again, it's just your summary. And then if you have 250 employees or more, or between 20 and 249 employees in specific industries, but I can tell you if you're construction or manufacturing, you're going to need to post. You need to actually report your 300 summaries by March 2nd to OSHA's website. OSHA does recommend that you guys do this as soon as possible. Last year on March 2nd, their website crashed because everybody in the 27 federal OSHA states, they are uploading this information at once. So it's not just us here in Ohio, it's 27 other states that are in the federal program. So make sure you guys are uploading that information. If you have questions, I can try to help you. But honestly, this is, if you need your login information for OSHA's website, call OSHA. I'm BWC. So I do get questions on that, and I always have to say, you need to contact OSHA's customer service. I cannot help you in that. But if you want your 300 summaries or your 300 logs reviewed to make sure that you're putting everything kind of just right, definitely reach out to me, and I can help you guys with that as well. And with that, I will pass it back to Matt.
As always, thank you, Laura. You are the best kept secret, definitely for our safety council for sure. But we hope that everyone, at least here, is aware of you and utilizing your services. You always do an amazing job. Thank you again. With that, I will hand it over to Dan for the remainder of the program today.
Well, I appreciate it, Matthew. Good morning, everybody. I appreciate you hosting us today and inviting us out. It's always good to have an open conversation here on what's new with OSHA and what's happening, the latest and greatest. So does everyone see my screen all right?
Yes.
All right, let me get situated here. So I will say we have this kind of boilerplate template presentation that talk about a lot of the hot topics and emphasis programs that we do currently have. It appears we have a fairly small group here today too, and I love that dialogue back and forth. So by all means, if you have a question, whether it's related to what we're talking about, or what if questions, or this happened once related to OSHA, by all means, I'm sure Matt can kind of monitor some of that chat. Feel free to ask. So. Once again, Dan Steffen, I'm one of the assistant area directors here at the Toledo OSHA office. I have myself and my counterpart, Chad Positano, the assistant area directors. Then we just brought in recently a new area director, Todd Jensen, to our office. So we've had a lot of changes in our office in the last 2 years, even outside all the COVID stuff, personnel change. We had some shifts. People move up to the regional office, national office, and so we got a lot of new faces, compliance officer wise too. So it's been a whirlwind of the last 2 years, to say the least. I think everyone kind of felt some of that, across the board with different things. So today, hopefully we can kind of talk about some of these items. And like I said, any questions that come up, please feel free to reach out. Let me get my Screen organized here a little bit. Move this over. All right, so OSHA, obviously when everyone thinks OSHA, the first thing they think of is the enforcement side of the house. Obviously that is a large component of what we do. We do want to ensure that places of employment are safe for the employees. We do this through, on-site inspections, inquiries, following up with complaints that might come into the office. But some of these other components sometimes gets glazed over a bit, and that's the outreach component in the compliance assistance. So, with outreach, just kind of like what we're doing here today, able to put a face to the name, maybe explain a little bit what we do, provide some context on some of our emphasis programs and focus areas, as well as providing compliance assistance. Laura was briefly talking about some of the programs that are available to you. Obviously, the BWC has a great program. They're a great resource to help, facilitate, on-site inspections, more consulting type role, make sure everything's aligned at your facility, as well as OSHA on-site, which is that joint effort through BWC and OSHA. I always say it's always easier to nip some of these issues in the bud on the onset or on the front side than worrying about the issues on the back side through enforcement. So don't ever hesitate as you're managing your safety and health management systems. If anything does come up and you're not sure of it, reach out. We want to be a resource here too, even at the OSHA office. If you have a question, you can always call our office, speak to our duty officer, which we have on staff each day, each working day, and hopefully get you some answers to any questions you may have. So real quickly, just kind of give a structure and how we're organized. Within OSHA, we have 10 different regions. We here in the upper Midwest or the Great Lakes area, we are part of Region 5, which is headed up out of the Chicago regional office. Is that screen full? Can you see the whole screen? Let me move this over.
The small section on the right seems to be getting cut off.
How about there?
Perfect.
Okay, good. As I mentioned, we are part of Region 5. We have 6 states that are within Region 5. Half of them are state-run programs. Michigan, Indiana, and Minnesota are state-run programs. The only difference is standards are very similar. They just management within that state, but they still have to meet or exceed whatever the federal OSHA standards are. So if you are a facility that happens to have operations in one of these state plans, you still get that consistency from state to state. It's just really only a name for the most part. So here in Ohio, we are federally run. I work for the U.S. Department of Labor, and the balance of the states would be Wisconsin and Illinois are federally run programs. Within the state of Ohio, we have 4 area offices. You guys down in Marion, is that Harding County? I'm having
It's Marion County.
Marion County, geez. You guys being in very close proximity to Columbus. There might be some areas, jurisdictional areas. You have other facilities that are just south of you. It fall under the jurisdiction of the Columbus office. But I will say we work hand in hand with all the Ohio offices. So really, if you reach out to any one of us, we'll be glad to point you in the right direction. But we have Cleveland, Columbus, Cincinnati, and Toledo, and we're basically kind of divided into 4 quadrants. So we get the Northwest Ohio area, but it's still a fairly large geographical area. Just a quick background of our office. I mentioned there's 2 assistant area directors, myself and Chad, our area director, Todd. And then we currently have on staff, let's see, we've been hiring, I think we're up to 12 compliance officers. And they do have different disciplines or specialties. We have a couple that are focused on the construction side. We have a handful, I think 5 or 6 current industrial hygienists that focus more on the safety aspects of industry. And then we have a couple general industry compliance officers also that kind of focus more on the manufacturing side of the house. But being a fairly small office, we do cross-train and get a little involvement in all aspects of employment. So it's a good around, we have expertise, but able to respond whatever the situation presents. So out of the regional area office, some of our functions, as I mentioned before, the main function is the on-site inspection. Eyes on, and these are in response to complaints we might get from employees. They could be referrals, employer referrals. We'll talk about that a little bit more in depth. As far as reporting an accident, fatality, amputation, loss of an eye. The inspections also can be generated through programs that we do utilize. So, these are typically lends themselves to more high hazard industries. If we identify trends at the national office level, they might implement some emphasis programs, and we'll identify a group or a industrial code that operates within that type of work or scope of work, and we might randomly generate some lists. We'll generate some random list of companies that might operate within that industrial code, and we'll have program type inspections. So unannounced, those aren't based on complaints or anything, but just verifying compliance. We also offer compliance assistance in Northern Ohio. Our CAS, as we call them, our Compliance Assistance Specialist, operates out of the Cleveland office. They're another great resource. They facilitate a lot of our partnerships, alliances, any specialized industries that might have events. We'll talk about grain handling and things that we see a lot of in Northwest Ohio. They generally spearhead and facilitate. As I mentioned, outreach, training. We're involved in the training platforms with OSHA 10 and 30-hour classes. A lot of those are conducted by third-party persons, but the curriculum's all set up through what we call the OTI Center, or the OSHA Training Institute. Sets that curriculum and oversees a lot of the certifications on that end. We also manage the penalty collection on the backside of inspections. If violations are found, citations are issued, we manage the collection side of things. And then lastly, and probably the most important aspect of our jobs, is the abatement assurance, or verifying that abatement was complete, the items were fixed. At the end of the day, I think that's a common goal with everybody that deals in the safety realm, is identifying and getting those issues corrected. So briefly, real quick, kind of talked about them, kind of delineates the state plans. You can see, throughout the country, it's about a 50-50 split. I think, right here, 22 state plans, that do cover the private sector, and as long as the state and local government workers. So, one thing when OSHA was set up, a part of the OSHA Act of 1970, it did give the option for the states to manage their own systems, their own OSHA programs, and these 22 states took that option. Here in Ohio, we are, as I mentioned, federally run. We do cover federal places of employment as well as the private sector. Any state or local municipalities fall under a program called PERP here in Ohio, which is Public Employees Risk Reduction Program. And that program kind of mirrors the OSHA program for the most part. And they enforce safety and health conditions at the state level and local municipalities. So here's a quick chart here to kind of give an idea of our number of inspections conducted by federal OSHA over the last handful of years, 10 plus years. As you see, we stay fairly consistent. Just like everybody else, we mentioned on the onset of the presentation, COVID threw a little bit of a wrench in our on-site inspections there throughout the fiscal year 2020. Just like everybody else, we were trying to navigate on establishing a presence out in the field, while still, ensuring the safety of our compliance officers and the others that we might come in contact with. So we did have to set up some remote inspections at the time. We were able to kind of work through and problem solve, a lot of the roadblocks that are in our way and still be able to service our stakeholders out in the field. But, it's not on here, but, our trend's starting to get back up. Numbers start to get back up and getting out in the field and get back to the historical number of inspections that we have performing. You can see little dips. Without getting political or anything like that, you can see sometimes administration might have different priorities, and you'll see little dips and increases over the course of different administrations. Might have different priorities, focuses, and whatnot that tend to adjust these numbers a little bit. So getting into some of the violations that we do see. This is the latest data that came out in 2021. These are overall the violations that were cited in fiscal year 2021. And these, I guess, unfortunately, kind of stay fairly consistent, over the course of years. And they do, tie into what we consider high hazard. Falls are always at the top of the list for the killers in the workplace. And that's obviously going to be an area of focus and what we're looking at more times than not. And that's supported by one of our emphasis programs, our local emphasis programs that deal with falls. So I'll talk a little bit more of those on the construction side in a bit. But you see falls in activities that contribute to falls, so scaffolding, ladders, are going to be high on the list. Then we get into some of the respiratory protection, health side of things, HAZCOM. Lockout is always something I do want to highlight. It's always an area of focus, particularly on the manufacturing side of the house. That coupled with machine guarding, if you do operate in a manufacturing setting, stamping presses, machinery, making widgets and whatnot, this would be an area of focus I would really hone in on. With the reporting requirement that was implemented back in 2015. I guess before that, I never really realized how many incidents and amputations and hospitalizations we really have just in our geographical jurisdiction, Northwest Ohio. But, my estimate is at least weekly, if not more than weekly, we are getting reports of amputations. And when we kind of drill those down and look at the cause of those, generally they're related deficiencies found in lockout and machine guarding. So, once again, you utilize Laura's group, BWC or OSHA on site, and you have them come out and do a consultation inspection. That would be one of the areas I would, like I said, hone in on a little bit. So breaking it down into different industries on the construction side of things, once again, we mentioned falls. Those are going to be at the top of the list. 1 through 4 are associated with falls, which we have a local emphasis program. So what that means on the construction side, if our compliance officers are out and about and we do see anyone work from heights, we are obligated under that directive to make a stop and ensure that the employees performing that work from elevations have all the appropriate gear, equipment needed to provide that fall protection. We also go down the list. We look at general safety and health provisions, which are programs. That's been an area of focus too. I know a lot of times we think of programs, we think of that binder, that book that just kind of, mentions a lot of the OSHA standards. But more times than not, it's to have a good safety and health program. It is more than that. It's your expectations as the employer, how those expectations are communicated, and most importantly, is how those expectations are enforced. So, over the course of my tenure, I've been, with the agency for 15 years, spent the first 10 years out in the field, primarily focused on construction. I see a lot of great written programs, but more times than not, they might turn into paperweights that sit in the corner of the job trailer, back at the office. They're not really referenced, things like that. So, one of the suggestions I always talk about when we're discussing safety and health programs and effective safety and health programs is keeping it short and simple, relevant to your scope of work, and making it easily accessible to your employees, because obviously frontline supervisors aren't always going to be there to manage tasks. So to have a good resource that employees can find and reference are going to be key to carrying out your management system. And then lastly, I did want to mention the other emphasis program here that's kind of referenced in the citations is the excavation. So that's another high hazard industry that unfortunately we do see a handful of fatalities still with cave-ins and whatnot. So if our compliance officers are out and we do see an open hole, we're generally going to pop in just to make sure the protective measures are in place. So I won't belabor too much on here. Here's the general industry side. They do kind of coincide with the overall top 10. But once again, you'll see a lot of the similar type things, the lockout, tag out, reporting fatalities, hospitalizations, amputations. I did mention, there is a reporting criteria for hospitalizations and amputations. As the word gets out a little bit more and employers understand their responsibilities on this end, we're seeing less and less of this, but the agency does take this very seriously, the timeliness of these reports, because it can affect our inspection and the conditions that are on site or were on site at the time of that event. So I'll talk a little bit more about how to contact us and the methods to contact us if you do have one of these unfortunate events. You see also on here, we have some electrical requirements. Those are a good area of focus also within your facility. And then as well as you see the 5A1 on here. And I think this is the first year where the general duty clause make the top 10. General duty clause is a citation that might be issued to an employer with a recognized hazard we might not have a standard for. But it's based or premised on industry standards. So, ANSI, NFPA, any type of recognized hazards, we can still base a citation off of. That's common. But I think the reason this made the list this year is because of COVID. And we all got kind of caught off guard on this, and it was a very contentious issue. It continues to be a contentious issue. And we had those temporary standards that were in place for healthcare. We had one that was coming down the pike, ETS2, that was put on stay and ultimately eliminated. I have my personal thoughts on that I won't get into, but that was a hornet's nest for everybody for a little bit. I'm glad to see everything kind of waning a little bit, moving in more positive direction anyway, and we're able to maybe focus on more traditional workplace hazards. Dan? Yes, sir.
I could be wrong, because you folks try to get this presentation every year ish, but I think maybe there was a 1 year gap or whatever. Is number 5 being that high normal to see the reporting fatalities, hospitalizations, amputations? Is that?
I don't think it's made the list before on the general industry side, believe it or not. And I don't really have a cause or effect of why it made the list this year. Once again, I would contribute any of these anomalies to COVID and the presence of COVID. So, these hospitalizations, we had to navigate these waters a little bit up front on, what's work relatedness, exposure, where exposure took place. And as we all know, it's hard to nail that down, specifically that, exposure or catching COVID came from the workplace or could have been prevented in the workplace. So, to kind of go back, on the reporting side, we had these hospitalizations, and there could have been some situations where the employer wasn't sure, couldn't nail down timely. I can't speak nationwide, but I know even at a local level, situations that did present themselves that the employer may not have been aware of, or there's some documentation to kind of support they weren't sure up front. We work with employers on the backside for these. Our goal is not to jam anybody, employers, just because so it's kind of similar to record keeping, just as a whole. If there's a logical reasoning behind the decision that something was logged, something wasn't logged, and there's some supporting documentation of that. I mean, there's some real world applications behind it, and we'll work with the employer on that front, if that makes sense.
Thank you.
Yep. So real quick on penalties. I know this isn't the happy part of the presentation, but obviously I think everyone recognizes, with enforcement, there's got to be some kind of accountability, I guess, on the backside of things, and to affect change. I know these numbers look big, scary, and I think by design sometimes they're that way. They do adjust. We do take consideration employer size, things like that. As I mentioned earlier, our main goal isn't to be punitive with employers. So, especially with small employers, first-time offenders, we're pretty easy to work with as long as we get a good abatement plan in place, and the employer's willing to, improve, maybe some aspects of their safety and health management system. So these are the statutory maximums. And a quick background, penalties were tied to what the statutory requirements were laid out in the Osha Act. And a handful of years ago, Congress passed a new law which tied our penalties back to inflation. So they do adjust a little bit from year to year. These are, that you see on the screen, the worst case scenarios, the maximum. And as I mentioned earlier, we do take in consideration, good faith, programs, enforcement, employer size, so on and so forth. The willful repeats, those are the big ones. Those are obviously less common, but they are a tool in our box for recalcitrant employers that have a really hard time, getting on board with some of the requirements. All right, enough of the bad news. So Laura kind of mentioned a little bit, talk about record keeping forms. I hope everyone's familiar with a lot of the common forms that OSHA requires employers to maintain. The OSHA 300 is simply just that log of work-related injuries and illnesses. This is that itemized log you maintain throughout the year for places of employment that have more than 10 employees. One thing I did want to mention with the logs, I think it's column F, the column that asks you to describe what the injury was and what they were doing and the machinery that they might have been working on that led to the event. Please be descriptive in that. And I see a lot when we're reviewing 300 logs that you might have something on there that just says, amputation or laceration. What caused that laceration? What was the employee doing? A little synopsis to describe it. And that's a good tool for the employer to use internally too at the end of the year. Once again, part of a good safety and health management system to kind of review and look at and identify trends that might be happening in your workplace. So you can kind of tie those back. And then it also provides some context, on a big data level, if you will, upon these submissions. So, it's not identifying and going to say, hey, employer, you're bad, but as a whole, what industries, where we're seeing the accidents, where we're seeing the injuries, and what type. So just kind of keep that in mind when, if you are the person that's managing those forms. OSHA 301s, these are just the first report of injuries. They're similar to the BWC first report of injury forms that you would fill out if you have an unfortunate event at your workplace. Kind of describes a little bit more of what the injury was, how it happened. And then finally is the 300A, which is just that summary. That's what needs to be posted at the end of the year that Laura was talking about at the beginning of the presentation. We had some problems before with our electronic submissions. Hopefully this year they kind of worked through that and expanded it, but it is a good idea to try to get the ball rolling on that if you haven't done so, so we don't have a bottleneck when it comes down to the final day. But our website is going to be a great resource for you. If you happen to have some time and you do visit our website, it's fairly easily navigable. If you have record keeping questions, this would be a good place to start. There's a good FAQ section, commonly asked questions, and then there's a tutorial here for you too that would be worth exploring. So we talked a little bit more about reporting fatalities, severe injuries. Once again, it's the employer's obligation to report to OSHA if an employee is fatally injured on the job or suffers amputation or has a work-related hospitalization within 24 hours. That's inpatient hospitalization or loss of an eye. So the fatalities within 8 hours, and then the hospitalizations, amputations, and loss of an eye within 24 hours. And how do you report? Real quick, you could call your local OSHA office, and you can navigate this, find our number on the website, if that's during business hours, or there's the 24-hour hotline. So really, we just got to count for that 24 hours, that time period. You can also access our website to make those reports too. So we talked about our ITA, which the injury tracking application that is due March 2nd. As we talked about before, and this applies to large establishments over 250 employees or high hazard, certain industries that are identified as high hazard between 20 and 249. And if you have questions, if your company or your facility falls under this certain industry category, I do encourage you to go to that OSHA.gov injury reporting, and there's an ITA tab there you can hit, and it'll identify, there's a list of industries per Nexus code on there. You can see if your facility falls under that. So workers' rights, this is an important aspect of our enforcement. Obviously, communication is really important up and down the chain to identify and bring up hazards in the workplace. And one of the ways we ensure that we keep communication lines open is having whistleblower protections. So employees do have the right to report on safe conditions and injuries to management and or OSHA. I would highly encourage, I'm sure it's part of most of your guys' programs, to encourage employees to bring this up. Obviously, management all the time is not going to see some of the conditions, with large establishments and things like that. So a good resource, a good tool you're going to have at your disposal is your frontline employees to be able to have the training and understanding to recognize some hazards that present themselves, and then having a safe and easy method to bring these up to management to get them fixed. So if that's an area of focus to really hit home with the staff, that would be it. Insist they have the right to assist in an OSHA investigation, participate in OSHA investigation. A lot of times, if we are doing on-site inspection, part of what we do is talk to employees. We talk to management. We want to get an idea of what the job entails, how they operate, what things they have in place and available to them, so on and so forth. So they do have a right to a private interview. They have a right to participate in the OSHA inspection without fear of a reprisal. They have a right to request training and request PPE. Now, this is always the battle with things. One of the expectations, we have PPE, request PPE. It's really going to be task dependent, and one of the expectations is for the employers to do an assessment of that work task to determine what type of PPE is necessary. So, once again, that communication is going to be real important, is understanding what the employee's doing, what their needs are, and what the potential risks are for that task to make that accurate assessment. So we talked about this a little bit. What is retaliation? Retaliation could be reduction in pay, being fired, laid off, suspended, reassigned, disciplined, demoted, threats, harassment, intimidation, maybe blacklisting from hiring. So, we always talk with employees and employers about what retaliation might look like. And obviously the employer has the right to enforce their safety and health program, discipline employees for deficiencies found, but they can be retaliated for bringing these up, and that's anything that adversely affects the employee for bringing up these issues. So please continue to be open-minded when issues might be brought up. And, if they're not an issue, if there's justification why it's not a hazard, providing that, having that conversation with the employee a lot of times clears things up. We'll talk about complaints here in a little bit. As you can imagine, our duty officer that fields in these complaints get all types of complaints. And, my boss is mean to me. There's no standard on that. We kind of navigate those waters and kind of really drill down, because we don't want to present things or issues, alleged issues, to the employer that, aren't an OSHA standard or aren't a recognized hazard. But we do have to take them with a grain of salt sometimes too. So at your resource, there's a lot of publications out there. I keep on mentioning our website, osha.gov. There's a lot of tools, a lot of publications out there that will help guide you on your safety and health management systems. Posters, publications, videos, all the contact numbers, dictionaries, definitions, and then obviously our standards are on there too. But they are user-friendly. As far as the topics, example, cranes. It can be tedious to get into the standards book and start going through the crane requirements. So there are some quick tabs. Might have to make a couple extra clicks, but they're pretty easily navigatable, and you can find them. They'll have quick takes that are user-friendly, readable, to kind of describe the requirements of that particular activity or industry. Small employers, obviously we want to be an aid to the small employers. We do recognize that they do have a lot on their plate. Just keeping their business running. Safety and health is one aspect of that. And, sometimes employers, when they're starting out, it might not be a higher item on the priority, but it can have some devastating consequences for businesses too. So it is in the best interest to, make yourself aware of a lot of requirements and the tools at your disposal to help support the direction you want to go with safety and health. Real quick, some of the cooperative programs that we do offer. We do have Alliance program. These are alliances that we do set up with employer groups, employee groups. So it could be labor unions. It could be employer groups. For example, AGC, Association of General Contractors. It's not necessarily one employer, but it might be a group of employers that we would share resources, provide input, and they might help us out in different aspects. One I like to talk about that we have active is with the training center for the local union hall for electricians here in Toledo. We had a lot of wind towers going up in our area a handful of years back, and we recognized that we weren't prepared to do these type of inspections, and they were on the forefront of constructing these wind towers, and they set up a little training center. They had a mock wind tower at the facility. We were able to develop an alliance. We were out there to get our compliance officers trained up on some of the aspects of looking at and inspecting a wind tower. So it was a value to us, and then we were able to go out there and help out with some training and different things they had going on too. So they provide value. They allow us to get out there, show our face, let everyone know what OSHA does and how we operate. So it's a good program. We have partnerships, kind of similar alliances, but these might be partnerships with a specific company that might have a big project. There's some benefits that they get, and as well as us, for facilitating these partnerships. And then finally, real quick, VPP, that's the highest designation OSHA can bestow on a company, and basically it's steps that a company will or program a company will go through to show that their safety and health programs or management systems that are way up and above what the requirements are. They're self-managed, and if they can show this, they will get this designation, and they might be exempt from certain program type inspections. And when I talk program, that's those random type inspections that we talked about on the onset. If we still have accidents, fatalities, we would still be obligated to our side of the investigation. And then challenge program, real basic. That's kind of the entry level before someone gets to VPP. So it's a program that kind of reviews what they have going on and sets a good foundation for safety and health management systems. And then finally on here is SHARP, our SHARP program. And that's the consultation program. That's essentially what we call the OSHA on-site. That's a joint effort through BWC and OSHA to help facilitate on-site consultation for mostly small employers. If you haven't utilized that program, OSHA on-site, I highly recommend it. I don't want to dismiss BWC. I know they have a very similar program. It's any of these programs that you have your fingertips that are free, I would highly encourage to utilize and get an extra set of eyes on the operations and not have to worry about enforcement. So I kind of briefly talked about this. I'll skip. I know I'm running on. I have till 12, right? Was it an hour? Matt?
Yep.
Okay. So we talked about these already. We'll get into some of the outreach events here real quick. So every year, once again, the agency, and this depends on administration, they might have some hot topics that they want to integrate into OSHA's focus. Some of them stay the same, some continue on, some are new. So one of the new ones we have for this fiscal year is heat and illness and prevention. I know when we look outside, this is not the time of year we think about this type of hazard, but it'll be here before we know it. And this program outreach events kind of focus on those outdoor workers, landscapers, tree trimmers, construction workers, and what means and methods can be utilized to help mitigate that hazard of heat and illnesses, hyperthermia, and whatnot. So some of the tools, some of the things that employers can use will be covered on these outreach events. Grain handling, stand up for grain. Unfortunately, obviously us living in an area with high agricultural activity, that grain, once it's harvested, has to be stored somewhere, maintenance and shipped. We have a lot of grain handling facilities in our area, and these pose a lot of unique hazards. And we've seen an uptick in the last handful of years on fatalities, particularly with engulfment, employees working in silos, moving grain. We had a kind of a high profile one here in Toledo about a year and a half ago at along the river here. There was a company that maintained some large shipping silos. They had some clogs in their conveyor systems. They sent a couple people in, and they were trying to dislodge this blockage in their conveyor system, and all of a sudden the grain gave way and engulfed, unfortunately, the 2 employees there. So we had a double fatality. In hindsight, after investigation, there were some things the employer failed to do that would have been pretty easy remedies on the front side to prevent that double fatality. So it's not the only one. We've had a couple other engulfments, as well as this industry does pose a lot of risks. We have these smaller towns that have co-ops and grain handling facilities that might be a little bit archaic and have some of their conveyor systems and that are old, unguarded, augers, so on and so forth. So not to mention combustible dust. That's another big risk within the grain industry. So with having all those in play, it's been an area of focus. So if you happen to be involved in the industry, April 4th to 8th, there's a lot of outreach activities within the state of Ohio that you'll find on our webpage that you might be interested in participating in. Work Zone Awareness Week, that's another unfortunate task or industry we do see a lot of severe consequences and injuries and fatalities from too. So if you have to operate in that industry, that's a good event to participate in. Stand down or fall stand downs, those happen. We've been doing those for about 5 years now. I've had the privilege to get out to some of these events, and we get a lot of participation, and it's a break from the day to discuss, fortunately, the number one killer across the board, which is falls, and how to mitigate those. Safe Sound Week, that's a week that discusses safety health management systems, programs, refining those, making them applicable to your line of work. And then finally, Suicide Prevention and Awareness Month. Kind of skimming through these, we kind of broke these down a little bit already. These are group efforts. A lot of these outreach activities are group efforts with, maybe the professional groups within that industry. So, National Grain and Feed Association, Grain Handling Safety Council. We like to partner up with industry experts to highlight these weeks. So we've been getting really good participation. And lastly, I did want to discuss temporary workers. This has been a realm that has posed some unique challenges on who's responsible for this worker on the job site. Well, at the end of the day, if you utilize temporary workers at your facility, they're both responsibilities, really. We're looking at who's tasking the employee, who's directing their work, and who's providing the conditions. So a lot of times it's going to be that end employer or the employer directing that employee's work that's ultimately going to have the responsibility to ensure they have a safe work environment. Now, staffing agencies on the front side, they are obligated to do their due diligence to ensure where they're sending these temporary employees have been evaluated for their safety systems, safety programs, and components. So I don't know if we have anybody here today that works at a staffing agency, but these are strong considerations to make sure we're evaluating the workspaces that employees might be going. It can't be one of those things we send them out with eyes shut and hope for the best. We do want to ensure that they have some oversight. Give some numbers. So obviously, like I said, a lot of staffing employment we see, especially now since we're having a tough time. A lot of employers have a tough time filling vacancies. This is a great resource for them to keep things moving, but at the same token, we want to make sure they have the same protections. New workers obviously are at increased risk of injury. They might not be familiar with the process. Make sure they're trained up, familiar with the operation and some of the inherent risks that might be associated with that task. And host employers might not have the same commitment to temporary employees as they do permanent ones too. The employer bears the risk of the injury. It's not always control the safety and health investment. So something to consider for utilizing these. There's once again a lot of great resources on our webpage to help you help you navigate some of these topics. Before some practices, and then lastly, young workers. I think we all have seen the signs. We're getting younger and younger of entry-level positions, trying to get employees, staffing up, and a lot of times that's going to go to some of the young workers that are starting out or entry-level positions. Same thing goes with them as any other type of workers. Make sure you're communicating, your expectations, programs, and then providing them a method to communicate with you back if something does arise. And then lastly here, if you haven't done so already, OSHA has a program, OSHA Quick Takes. It's a newsletter that's sent out twice a month. It keeps you informed and abreast of the comings and goings of OSHA, what's new on the plate. So if you are managing your safety and health system at your facility, it'd be a good thing to sign up for. Just like any other government entity, the wheels of change don't move super quick with OSHA and regulations and changes. It is a slow moving process, I think, by design, which isn't a bad thing. But when we do have those changes, they can be significant. So this would be a good resource to plug into to have at your disposal. And then lastly here is just our contact information. So we all have smartphones and easy access to the internet, so you can find all our contact information there. But if you want to jot these down, here's another opportunity to do so. And other than that, I think I covered anything. I open up to questions. I know I was rattling away here, but if anyone has any specific questions on things we covered or other topics, we got a couple minutes.
Great timing, Dan, and great presentation. Thank you very much. I was kind of monitoring the chat. I didn't see anything come up during it. Does anybody have any chat questions or want to unmute and ask Dan anything before we head off here?
It's a safe zone, so you can ask any question. I'm not coming out to your facility.
Barring none, I sent you, Dan, a chat message about with my email just in case to see if we can get the PowerPoint presentation submitted to me so I can share it with everyone after this is over.
Sure.
With my email in there, so you have that. So yes, we will be sharing Dan's presentation afterwards and his contact information. We have one. Okay, we've got one chat question that just says, "Good presentation, thank you." So not a question, but thank you. Ken.
Well, I appreciate the opportunity. I know when people hear the word OSHA, it can be intimidating, and there's a lot of things that run through someone's brain sometimes on it. And I do want to reassure everybody too. I mean, while we do have the enforcement component, we do want to be a resource here too. I think that's one thing that's unique with occupational safety and health. I think we all have the same end game, and I think the path to get there we can talk about and work through. But it's it's a noble cause. At the end of the day, we all want everyone to go home safe, and then it's just providing the tools and the information necessary to best make that happen. So.
Quick little funny. When I actually reached out to the Toledo office to schedule your presentation, and the person I spoke to on the phone said, "Thank you. This is the nicest call I've had in a number of weeks and months." So I was just trying to schedule a speaker. So
Well, COVID has stressed everybody out. And I could sit here and probably talk another hour just about COVID in itself. It's been challenging. We all know that everyone has different comfort levels when we're dealing with COVID and exposure, all the way from someone that just doesn't care at all to someone that wishes they were in a bubble all day long. And it's been tough to navigate. And real quick, the second ETS, the vaccination mandate, I think we were all surprised at a local level that just came out and, hey, OSHA, this is on your plate now. You're going to be the enforcement agent for this. You know, at a local level, we were scrambling a little bit, and, you know, it gets hyped up in the media, and we just haven't made everyone happy on that front lately. I didn't really shed a tear when that went away. We're still able to focus on the hazards, though, without ETS. So, you know, anticipated industries that could be exposed, you know, home healthcare, you know, all that type of stuff. I mean, we have respiratory protection standards. We have bloodborne pathogen standards that apply, that help protect employees. So, you know, we're not without any tools. It's just some of these things we talk about, barriers, and how that's a little bit more subjective end of things. It's just been tough to make to get the end. So
Totally.
Being
Well, thank
said
you
on that.
again, Dan. And we will see everyone, I guess, at our next Safety Council regular meeting in April. And again, we encourage all of you to join the Safety Congress when it happens virtually in March. And we'll send out information about that as well, as long as, of course, a follow up with this OSHA presentation as well. So thank you again to Dan. Thank you all for attending and those watching the recording, and we will see you in a few months. Thank you.
Thanks again.